We have a really very specific mission for this deep dive today. We are actually talking directly to you, the listener, as you're, gearing up for your Thursday Night Life group.
Oh, yeah, the Fajita Fellowship.
Exactly. You're heading over to the home of Jim and Vivian Turner tonight, which, honestly, fajitas on a Thursday sounds like an incredible setup.
It really does. I'm a little jealous, honestly.
Right. But because you've got this fellowship coming up, we know you aren't meeting for your normal discussion questions this week. So we are bypassing the standard, question and answer prep.
Right. We're taking a different approach today.
Yeah, our goal is to put a really heavy focus on the practical, daily applications of this week's teaching. That way, even while you're just sitting there enjoying those fajitas, you are armed with a much deeper understanding of what this material actually means for your daily life.
And to accomplish that, we are looking at a sermon delivered by Pastor Caleb Dragna. It's titled Spiritual Shrewdness and the Stewardship of Eternal Wealth.
Which is quite the title.
It is, yeah. He gave this message on June 14th, 2026 at the 9 a.m. service. This was at Compass Bible Church Hill Country over in New Braunfels, Texas. And the source text here is Luke chapter 16.
Okay, yes, Luke 16.
Which, if you know it, contains one of the most notoriously confusing, just head-scratching parables that Jesus ever told.
Oh, it is genuinely jarring. To put it in modern terms, imagine for a second you are the CEO of a massive company.
Right.
And you find out your chief financial officer has been mismanaging funds.
Stealing from you, basically.
Exactly. So you call him in, you fire him on the spot, you demand a full audit of the books. But before the security guards can even escort this guy out of the building, he logs into the mainframe.
Oh, boy.
He goes to all your biggest clients, and he just slashes their outstanding debts by 50%.
Wow.
Right. He just gives away millions of dollars of your money to make himself a hero to your clients.
That's just wild.
It is. Logically, your reaction as the CEO would be absolute rage. You'd press charges, make sure he never works in the industry again. But in this story Jesus tells, the CEO calls the scammer back into his office, gives him a standing ovation, and praises his brilliance.
Yeah, it defies literally every logical expectation we have about, justice and business ethics, and that is the crucial tension we really have to resolve before we can get anywhere near the life application for Thursday night.
So how do we resolve that? Because it sounds crazy.
Well, we need to look at the historical context first. So Luke 16, the primary audience here is the disciples. Though Jesus is fully aware that the Pharisees are kind of eavesdropping in the background.
Always eavesdropping, those guys.
Always. So Jesus sets up the scenario you just described. A manager is caught squandering his master's possessions. Pending doom is imminent. He is losing his job, and he admits to himself he's not strong enough for manual labor, and he's way too proud to beg.
I want to pause on that desperation for a second, because today we might look at this and think, he just needs to go update his resume on LinkedIn or whatever. But the stakes are significantly higher here, right?
It's significantly higher, yeah. In a first century context, honor wasn't just a feeling of self-worth. It was a literal economic currency.
Wow.
Yeah, that entire society operated on a strict honor and shame system. So if this manager gets thrown out in public disgrace for squandering his master's wealth, he doesn't just lose a paycheck.
He loses everything.
Right. He becomes a total social pariah. No one is going to trade with him. No one will hire him. No one will even shelter him. He is facing total economic and social exile.
So he's realizing he needs a soft landing immediately.
Immediately. So he goes to his master's debtors and he aggressively manipulates their contracts. He tells the guy who owes 100 measures of oil to just change his bill to 50.
Just slashes it in half.
Yep. Tells the guy who owes wheat to drop it down to 80.
So he is literally using his final moments of corporate access to buy friends with his boss's money.
Exactly.
He's making sure that when he gets kicked out into the street, these clients will feel obligated to take him into their homes because he just saved them an absolute fortune.
That's the plan.
But it's still just so incredibly jarring to think Jesus would use a white-collar criminal as the protagonist of a lesson for his disciples.
It definitely forces the listener to pay attention. Yeah. But then comes verse 8, which is really the mechanism that unlocks this whole parable.
Okay, wait on me.
The master finds out, and he commends the dishonest manager. Now, the vital distinction Pastor Caleb highlights here is that the master, and by extension, Jesus, is absolutely not endorsing the manager's dishonesty.
Okay, good. That makes me feel a little better.
Right. He's not praising the lack of ethics. What is being commended is his shrewdness. It's his practical intelligence.
So it's his foresight.
Yes, his ability to look at a crisis, recognize exactly how little time he has left, and act decisively to secure his future.
Ah, I see. And then Jesus points out this stark contrast, right? Noting that the sons of this age, meaning people who operate entirely by worldly rules, are often way more shrewd in their self-interest than the sons of light are in serving God.
Which is a heavy conviction.
It is. Jesus is pointing out that a scammer is applying this incredible strategic genius and proactive energy just to secure a brief earthly retirement. And he's looking at his followers wondering, like, why aren't you applying that same level of strategic genius to your eternal futures?
Exactly, and this requires us to fundamentally redefine the word shrewdness. Because in theological terms, spiritual shrewdness is taking that exact same worldly logic, that foresight, that urgency, that relentless strategic planning, and redirecting it entirely toward God's purposes.
So it's flipping the script.
Totally.
Yeah.
The manager used resources that weren't really his to secure a temporary home. Jesus tells his followers to use the wealth of unrighteousness to make friends so that when it fails, they will be received into eternal dwellings.
See, that phrase, wealth of unrighteousness, it sounds intensely negative to me.
It does sound sketchy.
Yeah. But as Pastor Caleb unpacks it, Jesus is just talking about worldly currency, right?
Yeah.
Just earthly wealth.
Yeah, just money.
And Jesus explicitly notes that this wealth is going to fail eventually. So the directive is to use it now while you still have access to it, to invest in relationships and gospel impacts that will last forever.
I love how Pastor Caleb framed this.
It's like having a pocket full of arcade tokens, you know,
Right.
and you realize you are walking out the exit doors of the arcade.
Right.
Those tokens have absolutely no purchasing power in the environment you are walking into. You can't buy groceries with arcade tokens. So the shrewd move is to spend every single one of them on something worthwhile before you cross that threshold.
That captures the urgency perfectly, and it
Yeah.
connects straight back to Matthew 10:16, where Jesus calls believers to be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves.
Serpents and doves. Such a striking image.
It really is. It's a call to combine this hardcore practical wisdom with just unwavering moral integrity. And Pastor Caleb emphasizes that, apart from Christ, our situation is essentially the same as that manager's.
Meaning pending doom.
Right, pending doom. In the grand scheme of eternity, our life here is incredibly short. Earthly resources do not cross over into the next life, so the priority has to be concerning yourself with your eternal future, making the absolute most of the time and resources you have right now.
Okay, but let me push back on this a little bit. Calling wealth a neutral tool feels a bit naive when we look at how it actually impacts people in the real world.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we see wealth destroying families, corrupting politicians, and driving just intense greed. So how does Pastor Caleb reconcile wealth being neutral with the obvious corrupting power it has?
Well, he reconciles it by pointing directly to 1 Timothy 6. That passage clarifies that it is the love of money that is a root of all sorts of evil.
The love of money, not the money itself.
Exactly. Pastor Caleb argues that wealth is inherently neutral. Think about a hammer. A hammer doesn't have a moral compass.
Right.
Its value, its impact, that's entirely dictated by the blueprint of the person swinging it. You can use a hammer to build a shelter for someone who needs it, or you can use it to smash a window.
The hammer itself holds no moral weight.
None at all. The danger only comes when the tool becomes the ultimate goal. When you love the hammer more than the house you're supposed to be building with it.
I see. And building with it, in this context, means using your money to support organizations that spread the gospel. It means being faithful with whatever amount you currently have.
Right.
And I really appreciate that Pastor Caleb points out a pretty harsh reality here. Your attitude about wealth doesn't magically change just because your income increases.
Oh man, isn't that the truth?
Like if you aren't generous when you are making minimum wage, you won't suddenly become incredibly generous when you hit a six-figure salary. Where your heart is, where your priorities are, that is where your treasure actually resides.
Which brings up a massive psychological barrier for most of us. Because if wealth is just a neutral tool and we are called to be these shrewd, strategic investors of that tool for eternal impact, why don't we do it?
Yeah, what's stopping us?
The primary friction preventing us from utilizing this wealth is this deeply ingrained illusion of ownership. We live in a culture that completely champions the self-made individual.
Oh, 100%. The prevailing narrative is, I earned this paycheck, I bought this house, this is my time.
Right. But the biblical worldview completely shatters that narrative.
It shifts the entire paradigm from ownership to stewardship,
Hmm.
because the foundational truth is that God owns all of it. Nothing you have is actually your own.
Yeah, and if someone genuinely internalizes this stewardship mindset, the way they interact with their resources changes dramatically. Whatever we give back to God, He already owned in the first place.
Right.
And Pastor Caleb is very careful to clarify here, you don't give because of some transactional prosperity gospel promise.
Like putting a coin in a vending machine.
Exactly. You don't put in $10 expecting God to act like a slot machine and spit out 100. You give because He is the original benefactor of all of it.
It fundamentally changes the emotional mechanics of generosity. I mean, think about it. If I hand you a $100 bill and say, hey, go buy lunch for our team today, you don't feel a deep sense of personal loss when you hand that money to the cashier, do you?
Not at all. It wasn't my money.
Right. You were just managing my resources to feed the people I wanted to feed. And Jesus presents this as a pretty harsh binary choice. You cannot serve both God and money. You have to pick one to be the master and one to be the tool.
And operating under that illusion of ownership makes every single act of generosity feel like an amputation. It just feels like a painful loss of your personal security.
Because you think you're losing part of yourself.
Exactly. But when you view your resources as God's, generosity just becomes an act of administration. You are just executing the will of the true owner. It completely removes the friction.
That's a huge relief, honestly.
It is. And Pastor Caleb asks this brilliant application question based on Matthew 6.1 through 34. He forces an audit of this concept in our real lives.
Oh, let's pose that exact audit to you, the listener, right now. If God audited your bank statements, your calendar, and your giving habits today, what would He say you truly treasure?
Oof. That's a heavy question.
It is. Because it's easy to passively agree with the concept of stewardship while you're just driving to work or, sitting in a pew. But let's look at the practical application. Where are the areas in your life where you are most tempted to hold on tight and say, this is mine, instead of acknowledging, this belongs to God?
Pastor Caleb argues that if we actually believed down in our bones that God holds the deed to everything, our lifestyle would naturally shift. It would go from anxious hoarding to joyful distribution.
From anxious hoarding to joyful distribution. Wow. That captures the ideal state perfectly.
Yeah. We wouldn't stress about gripping things so tightly because we would just trust the character of the owner who provided them in the first place.
But let's be honest for a second. Doing an audit of our lives, our calendars, and our bank statements can feel incredibly heavy.
Oh, absolutely.
If we look at it and realize our personal ledger is heavily weighted towards self-preservation and extremely light on eternal investment, the immediate reaction is usually guilt. And guilt is just a terrible long-term motivator. It leads straight to burnout.
It does. And Pastor Caleb recognizes that danger, which is why he pivots the entire motivation for stewardship away from obligation and entirely toward gratitude.
Okay, how does he do that?
Well, he asks, why does God bless people with more financial resources? It's not so they can continuously upgrade their personal standard of living or, build bigger barns. The biblical framework suggests he provides more so they have more opportunities to express gratitude, to give more, and to reflect his grace to others.
And he points right to 2 Corinthians 8.9 for this, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Christ made himself poor so that we might become rich. And obviously, we aren't talking about worldly wealth here. We aren't promised earthly mansions. We are talking about being made rich in the amazing grace of salvation.
Exactly. Jesus had ultimate, infinite heavenly wealth, and he willingly bankrupted himself. He took on human form, took on the cross, just to pay a debt we could never cover.
So in the context of this deep dive, Jesus was the ultimate shrewd manager. He leveraged his own life to purchase our eternal dwelling.
And grasping the sheer magnitude of that generosity, that is what powers genuine stewardship.
Because stewardship driven by guilt is just exhausting. It's all about meeting some religious quota.
Right, but stewardship driven by gratitude is energizing. It operates from a place of overflow. You're constantly asking, how can I possibly deploy these temporary resources to express my thanks for this kind of grace?
And Pastor Caleb illustrates what this looks like practically by pointing to the early church in Acts chapter 2.
Yeah, Acts 2.44 through 47.
The early church is an absolute masterclass in this. They were pooling their money, their possessions, their abilities, and their opportunities to ensure everyone was cared for and to help others hear the gospel.
It was fiercely practical.
It was. And honestly, this brings us directly back to your Thursday night plans. I mean, think about Jim and Vivian Turner opening up their home for fajitas tonight.
It's literally a brilliant modern equivalent of the Acts 2 church.
Yes, they are literally using their physical possessions, their house, their kitchen, their patio, and their financial resources, right? Buy the chicken, the steak, the tortillas, the guacamole.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry.
Right. But they're using all that to create a space for fellowship. That right there is using the wealth of unrighteousness to build eternal relationships. It's exactly what Jesus was talking about in Luke 16.
Exactly. The Turners are acting as shrewd managers of God's grocery money to facilitate spiritual growth and community within your life group.
They aren't just hosting a dinner party. They're executing a strategy for the kingdom.
They are leveraging neutral tools for a profound purpose. And Pastor Caleb explicitly asks his congregation to reflect on this exact dynamic. He asks, can you think of someone whose specific generosity or their investment in ministry played a massive role in your own spiritual growth?
And we want you, the listener, to take a second to really think about that before you head out tonight. Who paid for the youth camp you went to as a teenager?
Yeah. Who opened their living room for the Bible study where things finally clicked for you?
Who bought the coffee when you were in crisis and just needed someone to talk to about the gospel? Someone in your past used their temporary, fading earthly resources to invest in your eternal soul.
The impact of that strategic deployment of resources is staggering when you really think about it.
It shifts the entire paradigm of how we view our wallets, our skills, and our time. Shrewdness isn't a dirty word when it is applied to the kingdom of God.
No, it means recognizing the sober realities of our existence. Time is incredibly short. Pending doom is only avoided through the grace of Christ. And the temporary resources we currently hold in our hands are actually powerful strategic tools when they're placed in the right blueprint.
They are tools to invest in eternal friendships. They're tools to fund organizations that are actively spreading the gospel. Tools to serve God rather than serving the endless, exhausting, culturally mandated pursuit of just getting more stuff.
The dishonest manager in Jesus' story looked at his impending crisis, and he threw every single ounce of his creativity, his social capital, and his master's resources at solving his problem.
He was relentless.
He was, and he was completely unburdened by the illusion that those resources belonged to him. He knew they didn't, so he used them while he still had access to them.
So as you head into your Thursday Night Lights group fellowship at the Turners, you are walking in armed with the profound why behind living generously. You aren't just eating fajitas tonight. You are participating in a living, breathing example of eternal investment.
That's a beautiful way to frame it.
You are stepping into an environment fueled by gratitude for what Christ did, rather than operating out of some dry sense of religious obligation. You understand the mechanics of spiritual shrewdness now. You know that God holds the deed, and you hold the responsibility of management.
Amen to that.
So let's circle all the way back to where we started. That fired corporate executive desperately and brilliantly hacking the system in his final hours to secure a future he didn't really deserve.
It's such a wild image for Jesus to use.
It really is. But it leaves us with this final provocative thought to just mull over as you head to fellowship tonight. If the sons of this age are so incredibly creative, cunning, and relentless in securing a short-term, temporary earthly future that is going to fade away anyway, what would it look like if you applied that exact same level of creative, relentless resourcefulness to advancing your eternal impact this week?